Good evening, everyone. It is, let me turn off the air conditioner here in the room. I'll suffer for an hour or so tonight. It is August 10th. We are getting ready for lecture 18. And what I want to do is go over the Minsky model of the general financial crisis. And you have an 8-page write-up by me writing a synopsis of the Minsky model as presented in the Albert Kindleberger book. So I'm going to use the share screen here on Zoom, and let's see, we hopefully this will it is should now the model should be in front of you. The writing, my write-up should be in front of you. So, tonight we'll just go through this Minsky model of the general financial crisis. And, we have two disequilibria caused by man, economic disequilibria. And this second most severe disequilibrium, the second worst, if you will, economic disequilibrium that can befall mankind is a financial crisis. The characteristic feature of which is the destruction or near destruction of the finance sector. And what does this mean? The destruction or near destruction of the money and capital markets of this world, and particularly the United States, since we're looking at the U.S. economy. And you all have had the opportunity to live through one, the 2007-2009 Great Recession, which was a financial crisis. By the way, the Great Depression of 1929-1939 was a financial crisis as well. And in addition to that, you have tremendous capital consumption. And it's capital consumption, which is a characteristic feature of the other type of downturn or bust that we got used to after World War II, right up to 2006. But we were not ready for the financial crisis of 2007-2009. And then the worst economic disequilibrium, or cataclysm, a catastrophe really, that can befall mankind is a demonetization, in which an alternative medium of exchange is not an option, not available. And the worst rate of unemployment in the Great Depression was 25% plus change. Well, in a demonetization, the social division of labor disintegrates, and therefore we have the rate of unemployment tending toward 100%, 4 times as bad, if you will. And civilization as we know it ceases. And hopefully what replaces the order that was just destroyed will be better, or at least we can function in it. But anyway, the demonetization is not in the cards right now. It may not be in the cards in your lifetime or mine, but what we have is very simply too much of case one, an increasing supply of money and credit, which would create a rip-roaring inflation, at least double-digit and probably triple-digit. You wouldn't go to work because you would be paid in dollars that didn't have any value, and your employer, the producer or offerer of services, would not go into the marketplace because he or she would be paid in worthless dollars, worthless currency, as it were. So production breaks down, division of labor disintegrates, and if production ceases, then consumption is soon to follow. I think I've told you that the people who started Leica camera, Leica is a fusion name, so I don't remember the name of the family that started it, but the founder in 1923 in Germany saw a way out of this disintegration of the division of labor, and really the taking over of society by the law of the jungle. And so what did he do? He got these great big Conestoga wagons, those wagons you see that were taken westward in the United States, full of everything. And he had a huge train of such wagons, many miles long. They proceeded in 1923 into Denmark and bought tons of food and staples, whatever, and brought them back to the town that Leica was manufactured in. It would be north central Germany. And the founder of Leica was revered. He almost godlike. And this permitted him to oppose the Nazis in the 1930s. And there's quite a story there. His daughter sought to protect some Jewish neighbors, and the Nazis gave her a rough time, but they even put her in jail. But the father had this reputation which prevented more terrible things occurring to the daughter and to the neighbors. Anyway, a general financial crisis is, we think, a monetary phenomenon. You cannot have a boom without meeting the necessary condition, which we discussed, and also the sufficiency condition. The necessary condition was given to us by Gottfried Haberler, the German economist. And Oliver and Kindleberger look at the financial crisis as created by too much credit, and credit is part of the money supply. He says the thesis of the book is that the cycle of manias and panics results from pro-cyclical changes in the supply of credit. The credit supply increases rapidly in good times, and then when economic growth slackens, the rate of growth of credit has often declined sharply. And here we involve the sufficiency condition. Credit bubbles fuel asset bubbles, therefore asset bubbles are a monetary phenomenon and result from rapid growth in the supply of credit. Oliver writes, the boom in the Minsky model is fueled by the expansion of credit. So, but before we really get into the nuts and bolts of the Minsky model, I want to take you to the pages 7 and 8 of the handout, and just put down some effects of the financial crisis that were experienced back in 2007 through 2009. First, there was a significant reduction in investment expenditures. This occurs at first when the lending, the necessary condition is not met, and the sufficiency condition. Lending and borrowing are curtailed as trust evaporates, especially in the interbank markets. And credit and collateral crunch appears, acollateral credit crunch appears, which may turn into a long-lasting what do I want to say here? It may turn out to be a long-lasting um, source of funding dry up that would-be borrowers and would-be creditors complain about a dearth of credit. And they did back in 2007, 2009. Then we have on page 8, the indebtedness in the financial and non-financial sectors must be reduced. A tendency for increased amortization and saving shows itself. Balance sheets in the financial and non-financial sectors have to be cleaned up. That is, toxic assets have to be sold. There were a lot of insolvent large retail and wholesale banking entities, financial holding companies, and shadow banks. And many of them became wards of the government. Business entities en masse become submarginally profitable. And by the way, that's true today. And the Federal Reserve is undertaking lender of last resort activities to keep many of our corporations afloat. They have too much debt, and with the coronavirus, revenues and earnings have almost disappeared. Tough times are being experienced by the corporations. Let's see, we have business entities en masse becoming submarginally profitable. We said that. Insolvencies and bankruptcies increase. The number of illiquid firms and individuals increase as well. A reduction in output occurs at first. Growth either does not take place or achieves low levels as the short run merges into the medium and long runs. Real estate, currency, assets, commodity, and equity prices decrease at first. Malinvestments undertaken in the boom show themselves in the bust. Capital consumption occurs on a large scale as a result. And this is the characteristic feature of all busts, and say the financial crisis, which we're talking about the destruction or near destruction of the finance sector. But there still is the capital consumption. Business formation, direct investment, and job creation are greatly curtailed. It's hard to get a job when you have a financial crisis. Let's see what else. We have individual money and capital markets are greatly reduced in size. The volume of loans and the number and amount of securitizations greatly reduced. And if nominal interest rates increasing attributable to the attachment of a greater debtor's risk premium. And we have the social division of labor contracting domestically and internationally. We have had high unemployment, of course. The highest rate of unemployment was, I think, 12% plus change for the Great Recession. The entire economy and culture experienced a lost decade or even more. Think of the Japanese experience, but also in the United States. We had, up until about 2014, 2015, we had kind of a stagnation, if you will. But still the easy monetary policy. We had the persistence of unemployment, high unemployment for a while, up until 14 or 15. The entire economy and culture experienced a lost decade or more, we said that, but extensive lender of last resort actions are undertaken by central banks. Moral hazard increases. Central banks may follow easy monetary policies forcing normal rates of interest to remain low or to decrease. The seeds of the next boom and the bust of the business cycle are sown by means of the easy monetary policies. Financial repression may be experienced by the savings strata of the population. And what are we saying here? Real rates of interest are so low that they even become negative. So there's very little incentive to save, and this is sometimes called financial repression by pundits. And we have to say that poverty and destitution not only persist but worsen, and the inequality of incomes and wealth increase. So these are the, through casual empiricism, what was happening in the bottom of the Great Recession. And, you know, it was a financial crisis. And we really have Minsky to thank for putting a model together. There really isn't too much, or not too much, there are not too many models of a financial crisis. And he is really the starting point of the study of financial crises. And whether you agree with him or not, you start out with Minsky. So everyone, we have the Minsky model, and there are 4 parts to it. There is a stylized model of speculation. That's the first phase, first step. Then we have the credit expansion. Then we have financial distress, and then the crisis. Now, the financial distress was greatly described at the time of the 2007-2009 crisis, but they didn't go into too much detail concerning the boom of the financial crisis, which would be the first 2 phases, stylized model of speculation and credit expansion. So the press, the media, kind of had a narrow perspective, if you will, on the 2007-2009 recession. And then, of course, with the passage of time, you had the contributions by academicians and others. And everybody then seemed to get a, seem to consider all 4 phases of the crisis rather than just one. And Minsky's model has a lot of psychology in it. He talks about euphoria, and he talks about a mania and asset bubbles. Euphoria is a term that has changed meaning in modern life. When we say somebody is euphoric, we're saying they're really happy. They're just bubbling, almost going crazy, if you will, with excitement. But that's not what it meant. Let's go back about 35 years, around 1985 and before. Euphoria meant feelings of being better off without any justification for it. And, you know, we've all experienced this. I can remember being on a baseball team, and we thought we were pretty good, and we were really good. But next to the last team in our league had a pitcher who really, for 3/4 of the game, he shut us down. And if it hadn't been for one of our players, we would have lost the game. But you see, we thought we were better than we really were, and we had no justification for that feeling. Mania is something that has a herd mentality to it. I'll tell one on myself. So for some reason, I was going north of the city, taking a train from Grand Central Station in New York there, and I think the train was to leave around 10:10, and there I was around 9:30, not too far from the train, that had already pulled into the station. And all of a sudden, maybe 100, 150 people decided to get on the train. And I thought, oh boy, well, I've miscalculated the departure. And so I followed them. And I got on the train, and these people were interested in talking with one another, having a good time. They were sitting in their seats, and the train wasn't taking off at all. If you do what everybody else does, if you follow the crowd, then this would be a mania in the Minsky sense. And he talks about asset bubbles, and you know what those are. Minsky believed that the financial system in a market economy is unstable, fragile, and prone to crisis. And this means that, we get a boom going, but it's going to be very fragile, break down, and then there will be a crisis. And your professor certainly understands what he's trying to say, because there is no end to the attempt to stimulate the economy by a central bank at the behest of business and other people. But it's my belief that if we were to do away with the business cycle, if we would stop our easy monetary policies, then we would have a different economy, and we wouldn't have the boom-bust cycle. And then the question becomes, well, how do you grow in an economy that's not subject to monetary influence? And the answer is very simple. You work hard, you save, and you invest. And the savings are invested in projects and have capital accumulation. And capital accumulation makes us all more productive in our work. So, and you don't have the bust, you have the boom because of the saving. It's a much slower process. The economy isn't juiced up, as it were, because of new credit, new money. And, a great deal of attention is paid to business process, and many of the aspects of life that we kind of just put aside because of the fast change of economic activity. Now, you have, according to Minsky, you have shocks. And these are usually positive shocks in the economy to start a wave of speculation, if you will. The shocks are sometimes called displacements by Minsky, and again, they're positive. So we had the Roaring '20s, for example, and the shocks in the 1920s, the Roaring '20s, was, catch this, a rapid expansion of automobile production and the development of highways, together with the electrification of much of the country and the large increase in households with telephones. So those are several shocks rolled into one, and they're very significant ones, and hence they can start a boom, or they are the beginning of the boom. A displacement, according to Minsky, is an outside event or shock that changes horizons, changes expectations, anticipated profit opportunities, behavior, some sudden advice, many times unexpected, for example. A surge in the oil price is a displacement. The shock must be sufficiently large to have an impact on the economic outlook. Each day's events produce some changes in outlook, but few are significant enough to qualify as a shock, according to Minsky. War is a major shock. Far-reaching political change may also change expectations. So some displacements are black swan events, war, revolution, restoration, changes of regime, and mutiny come largely from outside the system. They are beyond the unusual, they're beyond the usual set of risky assets that can be modeled as a in a probability distribution. Hence they qualify as a black swan. The shock is exogenous and it triggers a wave of optimism. Optimism is another name for speculation in the Minsky model. And along with the additional credit results in the boom of the business cycle. Now, by and large, the business people constitute the entrepreneurial class of the population. At first, the prices of specific producers and consumers' goods start to increase. Subsequent to this, an increase in the amount of credit permits the expansion of production to proceed even further. The prices of more goods and services rise as a result. So what we're looking at here is speculation that leads to an expansion of an industry or of a sector. And it's a non-monetary event. So we have a non-monetary event that can start the boom of the business cycle. There's some monetary economists who would not admit to this. I think they're wrong. But again, we're really talking about insiders and people who are responsible for the speculation, for the technological advance. And significant as it is, usually it involves only one industry or one sector. And that's not what I mean and others mean by the boom of the business cycle. It's too narrow. And you know, if we have a increasing economic activity, people are going to say, well, it's because of technological advance and innovation, not because of the boom of the cycle. So we want to recognize that the long run boom is brought about by additional credit. And here, all sectors, all industries can be affected by the new credit. And hence, we have Haberler's condition that an increasing supply of money and credit is a necessary condition for the long-run occurrence of the boom in the business cycle. And one other thing, people, I don't like to use the government's definition of a boom of at least 2 consecutive quarters of increasing GDP. This is unenlightened, you know, and you know, economic theory takes you to a higher plane. The several definitions of the boom of the cycle, the government one, the idea that there is a period of prosperity, which isn't bad, but I prefer this definition. The boom of the business cycle is constitutes a general attempt to expand production and of all prices to rise. Well, what do we mean? Easy monetary policy lowers interest rates, and that's incentive for a business to undertake new loans. They have lower interest expense, and they get the capital necessary to start out on long favored projects. So you have this general attempt to expand production. Now, where does "and of all prices to rise" come from? It really comes from case 1. If you increase the money supply, other things being equal, prices increase, purchasing power of money decreases, and of course interest rates decrease. So the increase in prices is meant in a static sense. And we all know that in a dynamic sense, other factors can be at work that can either reinforce the quantity theory of money or offset it. And so Minsky's saying, well, with this increase in one industry or one sector because of a shock or displacement, you know, that's a non-monetary factor giving us the start of the boom of the business cycle. But then we have to go to a credit expansion, phase 2 of Minsky's model, to get the boom that we want. And in any event, it's really the boom is a general attempt to expand production and of all prices to rise. Now, that's only of all prices to rise is in a static sense. But if we have a dynamic situation, then the rise in prices can be offset by and large. A textbook example of this is the boom period for the 1929-1939 depression. It was 1926 to 1929 was the boom period. And in that period, there was an inflation of 0.25%. Some people would say, well, there was no inflation at all. So in a dynamic sense, the attempt to expand production resulting in what? A general increase in prices? Well, this technological advance and innovation would put a damper on money prices, if you will. At least it did back in the boom period of 1926-29. So you don't have to have an inflation of prices in the boom of the business cycle. And most people will say, oh, yes, you do, but no. And we have historical examples to show. So anyway, the speculation results in bubbles and manias, of course. And Minsky talks about the speculation. He talks of insiders and outsiders. And the insiders kind of control the market. They take positions which the outsiders then try to imitate. And the outsiders are left holding the bag. So we have asset bubbles forming in the boom of the cycle. Let's see if we can find some other things to say here. So let's talk a little bit about bubble and indebtedness. For example, in 1928, the market value of transactions on the New York Stock Exchange increased at an annual rate of 53%. This was the boom period of the Great Depression, if you will. And similarly, in 1998, when we had the dot-com bubble, the market value of stocks traded on the NASDAQ increased by 41%. And in the subsequent 15 months, the market values doubled. How about that? So we have a bubbles form, and the rate of increase in the exchanges is really significant and awesome, really. And then we also recognize that aside from the equity markets, you can have too much indebtedness, and that can bring down an economy, as indeed did happen in the 2007-2009 Great Recession. A lot has been said about financial distress. I'll let you read Minsky on that. And we get to really what Minsky means by the unstableness and fragility of the financial system. And some of the description is very important to read there. But people, there definitely will be an essay question on this write-up, and it's your responsibility to master its content. One of the things that was apparent in with the midterm, the uploading of lectures to YouTube. Well, I was given numbers for each lecture, who listened to them, and many of them, out of 75 active students in our course, many of them maybe at most had 19, 20 people listening. That means many of you are not listening to these lectures. So I want to implore you, beg you to do these readings that I've assigned, and also to listen to the lectures, because I can't cover every reading assignment from A to Z. It would involve too much time, but you are to read the reading assignments and the readings, and you are to also listen to the lectures. So I'm going to quit here tonight, but you really need to make the effort here. And people, I can't tell you the number of people who said they didn't like their midterm grade. And there was a good amount of you who got scores below 50%, and it was very evident in the answers to your essay questions that you did not tune in to the lectures. You did not listen to them. I don't see how you can pass this course if you fail to listen to the lectures, and most especially if you fail to do the readings that were assigned in the one announcement that I sent out. So everyone, high warning, you've got to do the work. You've got to earn your grade in this Econ 3200 class. So anyway, enough of that. I'm going to terminate the lecture today. I'm going to first, let's see, share the screen. Stop sharing. There we are, back on the tube. And so I'm going to end tonight, and hopefully you will study hard. You've got till Thursday, I guess, to get everything done. So, okay, so see you tomorrow.